Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Nuntian 2030 campaign workshop. My name is Liam, and I'll be your MC today. But before we dive into today's topic, let's start with an acknowledgement of country. We respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. For myself, that is the Darug and Gundungurra people. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and support efforts in reconciliation. As natives, Indigenous cultures have a strong connection to the natural world. It is a place where they are born, where they grow, and where they die as well. And they recognize and embody the constant interaction of all forms of life that share this world. Some of us may be lucky enough to see, experience, or live remnants of this, but for the most part, our connection has gotten lost in the whirlwind of modern living. We've become so disconnected from nature, and I think you can agree that it's just not enough to have a small green space every now and then in a city. So how do we deal with this? It's not enough to have these little pockets to connect humans back to the natural world. Even if we get away to nature every now and then for a holiday, do we really connect? The 2030 campaign aims to inspire our active reconnection to the natural world we are a part of. As a spiritual and environmental community of practice, we hope to use our ethics and values to initiate and create lasting change in a world that is clearly becoming more and more desperate. So to prime us all for this kind of undertaking, I'd like to take you on a little journey. To take you all on just a short guided meditation here. So if you just like to get comfortable in wherever you're sitting, make sure you're in a safe space where you're not likely to be disturbed. It's a good idea to put your phone on silent if you're comfortable doing that. And just allow yourself to become very present with how you are, where you're sitting, your environment. And I would advise you to close your eyes because there is going to be some visualization here. But again, if that is uncomfortable for you, please don't feel the need to. So just allow yourself to become relaxed, become aware of your body. We'll begin with a short relaxation. Don't feel any pressure to relax. Just give your body and mind a suggestion. You might like to say to yourself, I'm relaxing the top of my head. I'm relaxing my forehead, my eyebrows, my temples, my eyes, relaxing my ears, my cheeks, relaxing my nose, relaxing my lips and my jaw, even relaxing my tongue, my whole head, nice and relaxed. Relaxing my neck and my throat and my shoulders. Relaxing my upper arms, my elbows, my lower arms, my wrists, my hands. Relaxing each one of my fingers, my thumbs, my index fingers, middle fingers, ring fingers, and little fingers. All the way out to the tips of my fingers are relaxed. Relaxing now my shoulders and the top of my back, my upper back, my middle back. Relaxing my lower back. Just making sure my whole back is relaxed. Relaxing my chest, my upper chest, my stomach, my abdomen, and my waist are totally relaxed. And relaxing my hips and my buttocks, my thighs, my knees, my lower legs, my ankles, my feet, each one of my toes, totally relaxed. Just become aware of the feeling of relaxation in your entire body as you sit there comfortably relaxing. You might notice that your mind has become a bit more still, a bit more calm, a bit more open. I'm going to ask you to do some visualization, just a bit of imagination here. So start to feel the bottom of your feet. Maybe they're touching the floor. Start to imagine this feeling going maybe a bit beyond your feet, a bit lower than the floor, down into the ground. imagining there is earth below you. And see how far down you can imagine your awareness going into the earth. You might even like to imagine that you've got roots growing out of your feet. Follow these roots as they go deep down into the earth. There's this sense of warmth and a slight dampness maybe of the ground around you. Almost like there's dirt all around you, keeping you stable and safe and grounded. Reach as far down into the earth as you can from your feet. When you've got this sense of stability, almost like you're growing from the earth, take your awareness back up through your feet and start to see your body from your feet into your legs becoming more stable. And almost like the middle of your body is becoming a trunk. Maybe your arms become the branches of a tree. You might feel a little bit like a tree in this situation. Allow yourself just to experience this feeling of being a tree. Allow yourself to imagine that you're in a forest and there are other trees around you. And you can feel the breeze, the gentle breeze. You can hear some birds, maybe some insects. Maybe there's some small animals roaming around as the trees from other leaves fall to the ground. You can hear all the sounds of the nature around you. You feel this sense of calm, ease. This is just nature doing its thing. Just another day as a tree. It's all your fellow trees in the forest. And you can see the sky is nice and blue. You feel the freshness in the air. Just enjoy this for a little bit. And then maybe you get a sense that something's a little bit different in this forest. Something's a little bit different today. You can feel the air start to become a little warm. You can see a little bit of grayness coming across the sky. You can hear something coming in the distance, but you don't quite know what it is yet, but it sounds like a bit loud. Maybe you start to feel a little bit nervous. And there might be this feeling that something dangerous might happen, something's coming. And you can feel this sense in the forest around you. The other trees know as well. You can start to smell a burning. You start to notice the sky get darker. You can start to hear the sound of burning and rustling leaves. And a sense of anxiety might come to you. You might start to feel very nervous. You might start to feel that other trees are starting to cry out as the air around you gets more and more hot. The smell becomes more and more intense and you find it hard to breathe. You start to worry for your safety and the safety of the trees around you. You don't know what's going to happen. Now I want you to just gently leave that visualization of being a tree in a forest. Allow yourself to feel grounded again and calm. Allow your roots to reach back down into the earth, the comfortable, stable earth. And now allow yourself to feel your feet, your legs, your hips, your stomach and chest, and your back, both of your arms, your shoulders, your head, and your face. And just notice what's changed in your body. Maybe you feel a little bit anxious, a little bit tense. And just let all of that go now. The visualization is over. We can return to a comfortable, normal awareness. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes and welcome yourself back. All right. So welcome back, everyone. I know that may have been a little bit out there for some of you, but I'm sure you all experienced at least some kind of empathy. Perhaps you were able to experience what it was like to be a part of nature for that moment. Now, what I just took you all through happened to me 6 or 7 years ago while I was living in the Blue Mountains, just west of Sydney. So I used to go out into nature every day and sit under a tree that I just picked. I liked the look of this tree, so I sat there. And one day I remember sitting under this tree, and for some reason I said, "Show me something." And I just closed my eyes and sat there, and I had this horrible feeling. And I just followed it. I didn't know what I was feeling, but I said, okay, let's just see what's happening here. And I just had this feeling that I was a tree in the bushfires, because where I lived at that time, the bushfires came right up to our doorstep in 2010, I think it was, or 2012. And that all of the trees in that area had become completely burnt. And they were just starting to regenerate. They were in the process of regenerating. So it was this lovely black forest with hints of green. It was beautiful to look. It was horrible that it had happened. It's quite beautiful. Anyway, when I sat with this tree, I knew that, that all of nature is connected in some way. But when I asked this tree to show me something, and I had this experience, I was sitting there as if there was a bushfire coming to kill me and I couldn't do anything about it. That's some of the worst anxiety I've ever felt in my life. And it wasn't even mine. So when this happened, ever since then, that was 6 or 7 years ago now, ever since then, I can't help but have respect for nature and the connection that we have, because they can clearly feel something in a way, to me, that makes them sentient. And it really confirmed for me that the fact that we are all connected in some way, and not just in that broad hippie sense of, we're all one, let's all party in that, but really, we're all in this together. And this is what is meant by terms like symbiocene and symbioment when we talk about mutually beneficial living. So if you've been attending these workshops before, you'll have heard these terms, but really what we're talking about is a way to work together as life forms in this world that we all make up. So with that, I'd like you all to share what you think about this, my fellow symbiotes. What is your vision for a mutually beneficial world? So it seems like we have a lot of potential and spiritual environmental activists. So I'd like to introduce you all to two more who are using their spiritual values to proactively engage with the world, facilitating perspective shifts that lead to lasting change. So Xiaomeng holds a Master's in Applied Buddhist Studies from Nantian Institute and is a long-term volunteer with the Guangshan Buddhist Organization. Throughout her studies and work experience, she's been inspired to explore how Buddhism can be applied to contemporary issues. And Yijun Gai is currently undertaking a PhD in environmental humanities at the University of Hong Kong and has also completed Nantian Institute's Humanistic Buddhism program. Also a long-term volunteer, her interests lie in exploring the practices and benefits of spiritual and environmental preservation. So we're very fortunate to have Xiaomeng and Yijun take time off from their busy schedules to present for us today on the topic of mutually beneficial living, or they're going to share on healthy planet and healthy people. So please welcome Xiaomeng and Yijun.
Thank you, Liam, for guiding us with the tree meditation and mentioning that we are all connected in some way. And hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. It is our honor to be here and share our thoughts and reflections regarding environmental and spiritual preservation. Yijun and I hope that our sharing could bring light and sow a seed to your journey to realize a mutually beneficial living. So let's begin. Recently, the IPCC reported that impacts resulting from human-induced climate change are devastating, like seasonal timing shifts, extreme weather intensity, and ecosystem structure deterioration. Though we know that solutions have been implemented, the progress of healing the planet has been slow. So there is an increasing acknowledgement that the environmental crisis is fundamentally a moral problem. The Untitled Bhikkhu demonstrates that people's greed and ignorance lead to the current disaster. And we have learned from the Vimalakirti Sutra that if the Bodhisattva wishes to acquire a pure mind, he must purify his mind. When the mind is pure, the Buddha mind will be pure. Hence, we can see that spiritual preservation is essential in healing the earth. But to be honest, I paid less attention to our environment before because I considered that an individual's effort could make no change in tackling the ecological crisis. However, my attitude towards nature changed when I encountered Buddhism as I began to re-explore and feel the interconnection of everything. At the same time, the year-on-year rise in temperature and the heavy smog in Beijing during winter days urged me to think about what I can do as an individual to make a difference. As a beginner Buddhist practitioner, I also wonder if Buddhism, which regards compassion and non-killing as its ethical disciplines, might contribute to the journey of a mutually beneficial living. So Buddhism advocates simple living and limits the usage of natural resources. This environmental notion can be found in the Buddhist Jatakas. So in a Jataka story named Merchants from Many, a group of travelers lost in the forest come upon a banyan tree. This large Bodhi tree is magical, as cutting one of its branches in any directions could provide the travelers with water, food, and precious goods. However, driven by greed, all travelers except one want to uproot the tree to see what the roots could give them. So the opposing traveler begs the others not to do so, as this would destroy the tree, but he fails. So when the travelers strike the roots, the serpent king that guards the tree jumps out and destroys all the travelers.
So as Xiaomeng mentioned from this story, we can see that misuse and greedy towards nature will attract horrific results. Buddhism, at its core, emphasizes playing respect and showing gratitude to our Mother Earth. So besides, some Buddhist principles and practices could also contribute to mutually beneficial living. So for example, one anecdote to eliminate greed and ignorance and treat ecological crisis with inner peace is mindfulness. Especially, our untrained, greedy mind enjoys the current pleasant way of life, which prevents us from appropriately responding to what is happening. So mindfulness helps us perceive clearly our mental states, respond appropriately, and take meaningful actions. So apart from practicing some meditation, someone also try to live mindfully to reduce her harm to the environment. So for example, she will use canvas bag rather than the plastic ones. And also she tend to buy recycled papers for writing to save resources and to reduce pollution. So she believes that every step taken mindfully in life is meaningful as it embeds an awareness of environmental issues and enhances moral responsibility on the individual level. So next slide, please. She thinks in addition to mindfulness practices, upholding Buddhist precepts, in particularly no harm, no stealing, no lying, with ecological implications can also contribute to addressing environmental issues. So, for example, no killing implies reducing our involvement in activities that harms others, including the biosphere. And for no stealing is to understand deeply that the earth does not exist solely for human beings. Hence, we have no right to exploit it. Currently, environmental crises urge us to stop stealing the earth's pressures and take individual responsibility in limiting consumption. And also for no lying means we should avoid uttering uncertain words that might bring further suffering to the earth. Also, no lying requires the media to stop disseminating fake news. Instead, they should use their influence to inform and educate people to see the actual situation. So next one, please. So on the individual level, Xiaomeng found upholding precepts quite beneficial, not only to herself, but also to the environment. And I think she's back, so I will invite her to continue her stories.
Thank you, Yijun. So by upholding non-killing, I reduced animal product consumption. So in this way, I can not only eliminate the suffering of the animals, but also reduce my footprint to save the earth. And by upholding non-stealing, I try to limit my consumption by choosing to ride a bicycle instead of taking a taxi or bus to nearby places. I walk more often than before because on the one hand, walking is good for my health, and on the other hand, I protect the environment from another angle. So further, by upholding no lying, I invited more friends to engage in activities such as recording videos to advocate vegetarian plans. And Yijun and I also helped design bookmarks to propagate mutually beneficial living. And we can see in this slide, Yijun also brings keys to nature to let them reconnect with the earth. I think by thinking big but starting small, everyone could become a contributor to making the planet Earth a better place. Next slide, thank you. Apart from avoiding unwholesome deeds by adhering to the precepts, cultivating positive Buddhist virtues, for instance, the Brahma Viharas can also bring changes to environmental preservation.
So Xiaomeng, I really like the idea of developing positive Buddhist virtues. But what does it mean by Brahma Viharas?
Brahma Viharas translated in English normally means the four immeasurable minds or the four immeasurables, and they are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. The Buddhist scholar David Loy prefers to translate loving kindness as basic friendliness because it directly reveals the fundamental attitude we should have towards nature and others. Instead of treating those who are relatively indifferent to environmental preservation as enemies, we could get rid of such dualistic thoughts by approaching them with basic friendliness. This will provide us with openness in finding ways to deal with environmental issues. And for compassion is cultivated by all Buddhist traditions. Compassion literally means suffering with, which implies an aspiration to eliminate any cruelty and harm towards oneself and others. In addressing the ecological crisis, a compassionate intention moves us to cherish the earth and gradually extend our care for all beings that live on it. But rather than compassion suffering with, the third virtue, joy, enables us to enjoy with others and the planet. Despite the suffering in the world, our relationship with the earth should be pleasant. Otherwise, our endeavor to tackle crisis will become suffering itself. Spending more time in nature with joy we will then enjoy its beauty and care for its health. Finally, equanimity reveals the ability of one not to be disturbed by what is occurring now. So I think when reinterpreting it under an ecological context, equanimity safeguards the virtues of loving kindness and compassion. So without it, we will bear the risk of burning out, becoming overwhelmed, and ending up with despair in tackling environmental crisis. But when empowered with positive virtues, everyone can become an inexhaustible lamp to inspire others to cultivate the same and collectively make significant changes. So this is me enjoying the beauty of nature by cultivating the four immeasurable minds. But I will share more about it in the later plenary discussion session. The practice of the four immeasurable minds lies in one's deep understanding of interconnectedness. So Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh explains it as interbeing. Interconnectedness reminds us to see ourselves and the earth as a coexisting, inseparable entity. Once we realize the nature of interbeing in everything, Brahma Viharas will arise, and we can deal with environmental issues with peace and love, striving for the wellness of the Mother Earth and eventually realizing mutually beneficial living. So in turn, environmental preservation can be a way to enhance our spirituality and humanity. This means in the process of taking care of Mother Earth, we become healthier both mentally and physically. Now I will invite my friend Yijun to continue.
Thank you, Xiaomeng. So now let me explain how, in turn, environmental preservation can be a way to enhance our spirituality and humanity. So first, Mother Earth shows us her wounds to help us identify our defilements, especially greed and ignorance. Since the Industrial Revolution, mankind has consumed large amounts of fossil fuels such as coal and oil, which has generated an excessive amount of greenhouse gas emissions and potentially led to climate change. So religious leaders and scholars have mentioned that our pursuit of materialism and unlimited economic growth are driven by human greed, and this, in turn, exacerbate human greed. So that acknowledging the logic behind climate change or broader environmental issues can enable us to identify the negative qualities of human nature. So these are the pictures that I took this week on a beach in Hong Kong. These pieces of garbage was discarded by people from different parts of this region. They were washed away from the land by rainwater and then brought back to the land by the ocean during rising tides. So by identifying each piece of garbage, we know that they belong to things that we use daily. And we can see greed through an excessive amount of beverage bottles and ignorance since they ended where they shouldn't be. I also see manifestation of cause and effect since what we have done to the environment will eventually come back to us. Second, we are cultivating ourselves to live in harmony with nature. We are planting good seeds to purify our mental state. For example, when we start to reduce our material consumption and apply the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, we enter a process of letting go of attachment to owning new things. We enter a process of cultivating mindfulness and patience. Also, we enter a process of better understanding emptiness and developing the wisdom to turn waste into treasure, or at least a funny memory like this pair of socks of the garbage on the beach. Yeah. Besides acknowledge our greed and ignorance, we are able to practice repentance, which means feeling sorry for what we have done to the ecosystem and also correcting our actions and trying to avoid making the same mistakes again. Meanwhile, by picking up these pieces of garbage is a good practice of mindfulness and the purification of both the physical and mental environment. Also, when we try to reconnect with nature, we feel receive and appreciate the interconnectedness mentioned by Xiaomeng. When we observe and learn from nature, such as understanding the process of photosynthesis, it is easy to see interconnectedness, which means that everything is supported by so many other things and conditions. Such like a tree needs sunlight, rain, soil, microorganisms, and a whole ecosystem to grow. And in turn, other living and non-living things depend on the tree. Also, in the process of building networks to tackle climate change, we rebuild relationships with people, which enable us to empower each other to develop a variety of solutions. And I believe this is a good way to manifest interconnectedness. And in the process of connecting with nature, we learn about what is unconditional love, as we can find everything we need in nature's silence generosity. And in the next slide, we know that such realization will naturally help us to generate deep appreciation and gratitude. And this kind of appreciation and gratitude will broaden our compassion and give rise to great wealth, which is to be at service for others in bioscience. And the action of making a vow is to let go of our ego, since we do not focus on our own needs. Rather, we enhance our awareness, our compassion, and our wisdom for a mutually beneficial way of living. So by knowing their mutual benefit, we encourage everyone to set the intention of practicing both environmental and spiritual preservation, starting the baby steps of healing ourselves while healing Mother Earth. And by doing so, we gradually cultivate the best resilience, which is the loving communities that take care of each other with compassion and deep awareness.
Well, thank you, Yijun, for emphasizing the importance of citing the intention. As you can see on the next slide, that I have listed some of my questions, because I think although I am trying to be aware of and mindful of limiting my consumption in life, sometimes I feel powerless when encountering environmentally unfriendly behaviors that are out of my control. For example, when ordering food, some takeaway boxes cannot be recycled, or I can't reuse the many bottles or paper boxes I have accumulated. So how should I set the right intention when facing such dilemmas?
Thank you, Xiaomeng, for raising up this question. Because many of us who are trying to contribute a little to address environmental issues are facing the same problem or dilemma. So although I'm still in the process of also figuring this out, I would like to share my thought based on what I have learned in Buddhism and my own experiences. So in the next slide, I'll try to answer a question. But first, I would like to recommend Xiaomeng and others to practice self-compassion to mitigate the feeling of worry and powerless. As we learned in Buddhism, we repent of our mistakes or incapacity and then move on and try not make the same mistake again. So if we can manage our emotions, we can try to ask questions to better understand ourselves and others, which may lead to the potential solutions to resolve the dilemma. For example, we can ask why we tend to order takeout instead of cooking by ourselves, and why the food industry tends to use plastic, and how we can suggest alternatives to help them balance profit making and environmental and social responsibilities. And by doing so, we won't fall into the emotion of blaming ourselves and others. Instead, we're actively looking for solutions. This is what I have learned about perceiving emptiness and generating wisdom of transformation. As Venerable Master Xingyun mentioned, we are not saints. We all make mistakes, but correcting the mistakes we make is the better virtue. And secondly, I think it's like practicing Buddhism. We shouldn't just focus on, we should focus on the process of transformation instead of attaching to the idea that whether we can achieve liberation. So in the process of resolving ecological crisis, we shouldn't attach to the idea of resolving all the issue. Instead, we should enjoy each baby step we have made along the way. So for the next slide, I would like to show you something that I do. So like what Xiaomeng is already doing, we enjoy each baby step with our friends and families. And such actions of creating groups of eco-bodhisattvas who can support and inspire each other are the process of building up community resilience. And for me, for myself, I really like to invite friends to enjoy vegetarian food together, and at the right timing, I share with them the reason that I decided to become a vegetarian. Also, I always wanted to learn about organic farming, but I didn't know how to start. So I joined a volunteer group to learn and practice it with others and to sweat with others while having so much fun. And for the next slide, I would like to mention another thing taught by Venerable Master Xingyun. He said, working on the beneficial half and the adverse half will naturally reduce. So as shown on the slide here, if we demonstrate our capacity and enjoyment of revitalizing nature through actions like tree planting, as well as reducing our own energy consumption, we may not only attract friends and communities to practice in such activities, but also influence the government and the businesses to regulate and support in a mutual beneficial manner. And next slide. So here you can see there's an invitation from Nanting Temple. So Nanting Temple is going to organize a tree planting event in the coming September. So if you are in Australia, please feel free to come to Nanting Temple and to participate and to help build community resilience. So we can see so many beautiful statues of Avalokiteshvara. So instead of talking about the story of Avalokiteshvara, maybe we can save this in our plenary discussion. I would like to talking about a story of a parrot. And this story was mentioned by Venerable Master Xingyun. And I think we can stop at the picture here. So I think Xiaomeng also mentioned that by thinking big but starting small, everyone could become a contributor to making the planet Earth a better place. So Venerable Master Xingyun once mentioned a story in the 100 Parable Sutra regarding how a parrot extinguished a huge fire in the forest. And in this story, the parrot made a vow to extinguish the fire, but he can only carry water in his tiny mouth. His action was seen by the King Indra, and the King Indra asked the parrot how it is possible to put down the fire with its capacity. The parrot replied, "Whether the huge fire can be put out, I don't know. However, since I am a member of this forest, I must save the place that I live in. I need to try my best." The King Indra was touched by its compassionate mind and great vow, and said, "Although you are a small parrot, you have a great compassionate mind and vow. Let me help you." So by not giving up on our intention of mutual beneficial living and to heal our Mother Earth, we will not only enhance our own wisdom and compassion, And also, we can find skillful means. And those actions and intention may somehow attract the attention of people who can resolve the issue at a higher level. And in the next slide, I would like to show you a sentence taught by Mother Earth. So it is natural that when we think about climate change or other ecological crises, we may be overwhelmed by despair, sadness, and anger. But Mother Earth will gently tell us, don't be angry. It's just a growing process for you. You will transform in the process of taking care of my illness. And these comforting and encouraging words also reminds me of the concept that it's the ones who cracked that the light shines through. So Xiaomeng, let's be the light and turn crises into opportunities to shine on others. For people who feel powerless, sad, or discouraged, I think we are all the children. I think we are all children of the earth. So we have each other. If we can all set the intention to be a diligent and patient student of our own cultures and faiths, and to exchange the wisdom we learned through interconnectedness, we will gradually find the ways to heal each other and to heal the earth. So that's all of the sharing from me and Xiaomeng. Now we would like to pass back to the virtual stage to Liam, and he will lead us to hear your wisdom in the discussion of the question showing up here. What is the spiritual principle that is important to you, and how can you apply it to achieve mutually beneficial living? So back to you, Liam.
Yeah, thank you both for your deep and personal sharings. I'm sure it's given us a lot to think about. But as activists, we don't all just sit around and think, do we? So it's time to dive off into breakout rooms and discuss our thoughts and come up with some action plans. So again, this question, what is the spiritual principle that is important to you, and how can you apply it to achieve mutually beneficial living? All right, I'm sure we've all had some really great discussions, very rich and nourishing, hopeful. Maybe you've uncovered some insights or come up with your action plan to save the world. So now it's time to discuss these little bits of wisdom that we've come up with the wider group. It's always good to share our ideas. So again, just pop any ideas you had from your discussions in the chat box, and I'll give them a quick read. So in our group, we talked about how overwhelming it can be. It can be quite overwhelming to think that we have to save the world when it's in such disrepair. So we talked about just doing our little bit, but always making sure that we do our little bit the best we can, and always trying to increase that little bit, because we can't just sit around and use recyclable coffee cups and things like that. It's better to get a keep cup, you know. Always try to do a little bit better, and if we get enough people doing their little bit, then hopefully we'll get there. But we do need that hope. We also need that action. Another thing we talked about was environmentally conscious eating. So vegetarian and veganism, eating local produce rather than imported things, exotic things, that sort of thing. Also recycling as much as possible. And also getting to know your communities, building communities around sustainable living. Because the more pockets of people we get into this, those pockets will grow, and then more and more people will become interested. So that's what we talked about. It was quite a discussion. Let's see what you all talked about. Yeah, so Jan says to keep positive, doing your bit, and it will rub off onto others. Great.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to be a bit gloomy about the whole thing, which it is. But if you can try and continue doing your bit and other people start to ask you what you're doing, some people think you're a bit of a dingbat, you know, while you're doing, but other people will pick it up and say, oh, tell them I'll be down soon and doing it. So I think you get a number of positive things out of it.
Yeah, it's great to set an example. I think that's where it starts, you know. We want to be our own influencers, you know.
Can I actually add something there? I would like to praise and acknowledge Jen for what she's actually have been doing. She has been doing a fantastic job that she would pick up rubbish from curbsides and put it on the Facebook and, extending life from whatever she found on the curbside and from her friends. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, I find that very upsetting, the stuff that people throw out, but I've actually met some very interesting people over those goods. And I met a lady from Sierra Leone who does it and sends back containers of stuff to her relatives in Sierra Leone that can't be given away here. So it's really thought-provoking when you see that.
Even small things like that, that's a huge impact for some people, you know.
Yeah.
Even though it may seem small to us, it may be huge for someone else.
It is, yeah, that's what she said.
Well, perhaps I can share with you an experience that I had. I went to Sri Lanka in 1976, and at that time, the economy was in a very bad state, and there was rationing. So because I was a stranger, I couldn't get a ration book. But even with a ration book, I mean, there simply wasn't very much to go around. And the interesting thing was that there was hardly any junk on the road. You know, usually in Asia, people just throw their garbage all over the place. But so all the garbage was simply unusable. Anything usable was picked up. And I can recall if I found a plastic, there were no plastic bags. If I found a paper bag, in one case, I remember finding a piece of thin wire. I saw it and I thought, oh, that'll be useful. I picked it up, I bent it in half. I took it home and I hung it on a nail. And indeed, some months later or something, I did find a use for it. But the point of my story is that if people have to, if they are poor, if there isn't a lot to go around, you don't have to preach to them about the Four Noble Truths or anything like that, or Mother Nature. Automatically, they adjust. And I've often thought that if they simply made a lot of stuff unavailable, you'd find that very, very little would be wasted. There would be very little to use. There would be sufficient, but there wouldn't be anything wasted. And I think the problem with at least modern industrial societies like our own, or consumer societies like our own, it's just so easy to use things and throw them away. And I'm not so sure that it's about changing your consciousness, it's just changing availability. But in a democracy, no party is going to win an election and be able to make those changes by saying, well, we're going to cut the availability of stuff. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. Like you said, in Sierra Leone, people don't throw things away there because they don't have a lot.
They don't have them. Can I just say something? I think we're seeing some of those changes actually happening and will happen as people start to buy. I know now I'm paying $6 for a lettuce, that the leaves I used to think, I won't use those outside ones, I'm now using.
Okay.
And I heard someone say they paid $14 for a cabbage, I think it was. That cabbage will be used totally.
Yes,
not end up in any sort of bin. So as electricity costs and all that soar, I think we will become more conscious.
Yeah, slap a big tax on virtually everything. You just see how quickly people adjust.
Yeah.
We actually spoke in my group about, resources and, paradigm shifts and things like that, we keep getting opportunities. You know, we have world wars, now we have COVID, we have lockdowns, and now we're going into World War III, or crazy inflation, all sorts of things like this. these are like perfect opportunities for people to cultivate a sense of resourcefulness and respect. I think, I'm thinking about it now, but when we had the first lockdown, people were panic buying toilet paper. Now that toilet paper is, if it becomes less available again, maybe people will learn to be resourceful with what they do have. That's just my hope, my little naive hope. But, you know, the story with the cabbage and the lettuce, like, people are starting to do that. Maybe they're starting to catch on, you know, instead of just buying 600 million of one thing, I'll take care of the little I do have. And maybe it'll translate into some kind of big change. I mean, it's me just being hopeful, but
I think you'll be surprised because I'm pretty sure that's the entire plan.
I'm really hopeful. That'd be great if everyone could just be really resourceful.
One thing to contribute, I think policy has a lot to do with business behavior. And I think what we need to do is get our councils and our elected officials, public servants, making sure that the policies align to our ideals. Like, as a fast food business owner previously, simple things so common an issue. The likes of, McDonald's and Hungry Jack, that they are forced to use plastic and disposable, instruments for serving food. Whereas we need to try and shift the issue onto reusable. So things like a plate and a knife and fork, which would save them businesses money in the long run. So there's a financial gain to everybody if they don't have this expense going out in the paper that can quite easily be replaced, by just changing policy. Development application, it's usually instrument based on you must use this stuff. A whole swathe of waste can be eliminated from the fast food industry just by a simple change, just like that. That's my thought on that.
Craig, do you think that one of the things is, though, that the things that we throw away are often very cheap, and if there was some sort of tax or some heavier penalty on it, it would entice?
I don't think that'll make any difference, because people are spending $18 at McDonald's just because it's convenient to go through and tap their card now. I don't think cost has any factor in anybody's consumption anymore because of the ease of spending.
Okay.
So therefore, I don't think any financial change, such as a tax, would have that effect.
Okay.
Jan, that's, to be honest, I don't think it would.
I think action is better than tax. I feel like we're being overtaxed, and I feel like every problem that comes to light is just getting solved with either giving money or spending money.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's the way out. But you'll find there's a lot of people that are willing to do better and to live cleaner. So what we need to do really is educate people on how to, reuse the resources they've got. We live in a society where we buy something, throw it away, buy another one. 50 years ago, we fixed all that. And if you gave people the avenues, the education, and the accessibility to use resources that were friendlier, they would happily do so.
So education is the key.
Well, education always helps, but education is a fickle word because you've got to not confuse it with brainwashing.
Yeah,
I think there needs to be.
People don't like to be mandated. That's the word we've just come from. But exactly. I think if you look at how we're dealing with COVID in a new era, I think we're having governments realize that people are willingly accepting their choice to voluntarily take the jab, as they're not being forced to do it. And I think that one difference makes the difference. We'll probably find more of these people are voluntarily doing things the government was having them resist and protest against during the COVID previously, which I don't think now they're feeling like the government's it's a conspiracy. I don't think the government's against me, I mean, I think because it's now up to them. So they're making their own choice.
I feel like I have the opposite opinion on that, where now that the economy's collapsing, the food's being cut, the fuel's being cut, we've got fires and floods. I think it's quite the opposite. I think the government is actually trying to throw us around, and people are actually more against the government than less. Because
no, but what I mean, Marco,
when all this,
I think they're voluntarily making choices rather than being mandated.
No, definitely not. I know about 6 nurses that are happy to go back to their job, but they won't take the jab. And the hospitals are running rampant. They haven't got enough staff. There's not enough ambulances. People are having heart attacks before the ambulances can even get to the door.
That's right.
Sure, there will always be people that don't voluntarily take it because of their own beliefs. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is the minute we mandate anything,
Absolutely,
we lose more voluntary people, more voluntary consent. I think we lose more people just by that simple mandate.
That's something.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer in governing less. Governing less is governing best.
Yeah, Chris mentioned in our group the value around starting supportive communities, because people become attracted to that because there's no regulation, there's no heavy rules. It's not out of your control. You're free to input and output as much as you like, and that's why we have these sorts of things.
Yeah.
So I'm just aware. I don't want to cut anyone's discussion short, but we are running out of time. So we will stay around after, but we'll just finish the session and then we'll continue. So hold all of those great thoughts because they're really great. I love them. So yeah, thank you everyone for your presence and your sharings and your contributions today. It's really great to see so many people from some quite diverse backgrounds actually and circumstances coming together to affect change in the world. As we mentioned before, the 2030 campaign is this is what it is. It's all kinds of people coming together to embody spiritual values to affect lasting change in our world. This is the world we all make up together, and more of us are now realizing that we can't take it for granted anymore. More and more of us are starting to realize the interconnectedness of all life forms. So now it's time to honor this interconnectedness, and that's what mutual beneficial living is all about. So we're getting the realization, but now it's time to act. So with that, we invite you to join us in these 2030 campaign workshops as we continue the journey to the Symbiocene in these monthly workshops. You can subscribe to our newsletter or engage with us on social media if that's your thing. And if you're feeling really passionate, you can even volunteer with us. We do have workshops, events, all sorts of things coming up to help engage our communities. So Tom will post some links to that in the chat if you'd like to connect. But as we conclude today, I'll invite Venerable Miao Yo to dedicate the merits of this session and all our future efforts to all sentient beings.
First of all, I want to thank the organizers and our speakers for such a very inspiring conversation that we have today. I'm sorry I missed the first part of our workshop. So from what I have listened and heard, they bring a lot of sort of inspiration to me as well, knowing that we have so many people caring about the environment and so keen to do something about our future. So with this in mind, I like to send merits to all sentient beings. So let's say this together in our heart or mind. May kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity pervade all worlds. May we cherish and build affinities to benefit all beings. May Chan, Pure Land, and precepts inspire equality and patience. May our humility and gratitude give rise to great vows.